Chapter 1031. No matter what happened, there are always people who have to carry some burdens so that we can live peacefully in a place without the flames of war. Many people were envious of China. They said that this was the only country that didn't have to worry about war. The sunrise was the same every day. Jianghu City's mornings were filled with life. Even beside the courtyard there would be a classic alley. In the alley, there would be freshly baked golden wuxia with soy milk or tofu pudding. One bite would make one sweat, but it was satisfying. But today the boss saw that Lin Feng was the only one eating breakfast. He chuckled and asked, "Do you want one person's portion today?" Lin Feng replied vaguely. The boss wiped the table and placed the food on it before turning to take the wuxiao. When Lin Feng lowered his head to drink the soy milk, he smiled. He wasn't used to it, but who didn't live like this? But it was a coincidence because this was the closest way to enter the courtyard. Cabs wouldn't drive in. Hence, when Lin Feng raised his head to take the wuxiao, he saw Xuanhu, who hadn't returned all night, walking over. When Xuanhu saw him, he paused. The boss laughed. "There are obviously two people. All right, I'll take another portion, the usual?" He turned to ask Xuanhu. Xuanhu replied. Then he stuffed one hand into his pocket and walked over, sitting opposite Lin Feng. In reality, Lin Feng wasn't prepared to see Xuanhu so soon. But the other party acted as though nothing had happened. It wasn't appropriate for him to mention yesterday's incident. He didn't speak, lowering his head to drink another mouthful of soy milk. When the boss served the wuxiao, he was shocked. What was going on with these two? In the past, when they sat here, they couldn't even finish their sentences, especially the one with fair skin. The boss was referring to Lin Feng. Xuanhu was looking at him too. Then he turned his head and lit a cigarette. "How was your sleep yesterday?" "It was all right." Lin Feng looked up. "Smoking the moment you woke up?" Xuanhu rubbed his eyes and smiled. "It's refreshing." When Lin Feng heard this word, he didn't know what expression to make. Indeed, he looked like he had been tormented the whole night. He could only smile. Otherwise, no matter what he said, he would end up like an idiot just like yesterday. Xuanhu watched his smile, lowered his head slowly, and drank a mouthful of soy milk. Just like before, the two of them sat at the same stall and ate breakfast, but the atmosphere was completely different. Perhaps Lin Feng also realized that he couldn't let the atmosphere get too awkward. He bit his fried dough stick and asked, "I heard from Auntie that you've already booked your plane ticket?" Xuanhu had always been a man of few words. "We'll be flying in 2 weeks." Lin Feng sighed. "The world of the top students. When you go there, remember to send me anything good. I'm not picky." At this moment, Xuanhu seemed to have recovered his composure. "I know." Lin Feng didn't say anything else. He swallowed the fried dough stick with the last mouthful of soy milk. After he was done, he stuffed his hands into his pockets and waited for Xuanhu. The two of them entered the courtyard together. When it was time to enter the house, Xuanhu paused. "You really aren't leaving the country?" "No." Lin Feng smiled. "What?" Xuanhu, "Nothing." Lin Feng, "That person last night?" When he saw Xuanhu's gaze sweeping over, Lin Feng explained, "I mean, it's not bad, I can go overseas with you. They are more lenient in this aspect, but you have to be careful, don't let your family scare auntie and uncle." Xuanhu didn't know why he laughed, but there wasn't a hint of a smile in his eyes. "Firstly, your evaluation of others is not bad, they are quite obedient." "That's good." Lin Feng's stomach no longer hurt. He reached out and patted his shoulder. "I wish you happiness. I'll go in first, I'm still sleepy." Xuanhu replied again. "All right." But he stood in the same spot without leaving. Lin Feng took 2 steps and turned back. "Is there anything else? You should find a girlfriend, right?" Xuanhu's voice was faint. Lin Feng frowned. "I don't have such plans." "Find one soon." Xuanhu chuckled lightly. "Hey," Lin Feng replied. "Don't drag me into the pit when you're no longer single. I enjoy my current state, let's talk about it later." Xuanhu still didn't move. This time, Lin Feng didn't turn back because Mother Lin had woken up. "My mom is calling me, she must be asking me to play music for her." Lin Feng lifted his head and glanced at the Lin family, smiling at Xuanhu. "I'm going in." He really walked in. He probably didn't want to see the person who hadn't slept the entire night. Were all youngsters so demanding? Lin Feng laughed, his hair covering his face, the corners of his lips sinking. "Hey, is Huzi outside?" Mother Lin asked. Lin Feng reached out to stop her. He went back to catch up on his sleep. "Empress Dowager, I think you should have breakfast first." "Sure, play a song." Mother Lin was a straightforward person. Lin Feng took her phone and started searching. Mother Lin glanced at her son, then at Yunhu who stood outside for a while before turning to leave. Little Feng, are you bullying who? What are you thinking? Lin Feng turned on the music. Mother Lin felt that something was wrong. Who usually comes in with you, but today he didn't even enter the door. Besides, the two of you didn't come back together last night. If you didn't bully him, what did you do? Empress Dowager, I'm innocent. Lin Feng wanted to dismiss his mother with a sentence. But Mother Lin was a perceptive person. Tell me what exactly happened. Lin Feng obviously wouldn't tell her the truth, but he couldn't go upstairs like that. He beautified the incident yesterday. I'll tell you, keep it a secret. Speak. Mother Lin's face was stern. Lin Feng smiled. Nothing much, who has a girlfriend and asked me to cover for him. Yesterday he went karaoke with her and just came back. He's very tired and wants to go back to sleep. Empress Dowager, you're thinking too much. Girlfriend? Mother Lin was shocked. Who has a girlfriend? MMH, Lin Feng replied. Mother Lin was still in disbelief. Who has a girlfriend? Why does it feel so surreal? So many people in the courtyard have tried, but he didn't agree. It's free love now, it's as awkward as you said. Lin Feng was speaking the truth. Mother Lin shook her head. Who has always been more scheming than you? He's going overseas, how can he have a girlfriend? His girlfriend is going overseas too, she's going to the same school as him, Lin Feng replied. Mother Lin replied. That's good. Lin Feng smiled as he went upstairs. There was no more chatter, only music. Someone was singing. I know you left too early, but I still wish you a long life together. All good things must come to an end. This sentence wasn't just suitable for Yunhu, it seemed to apply to Supreme Alliance as well. The Asian esports competition was half a month later. But due to some practical considerations, the final name list hadn't been decided. Regardless of whether it was Supreme Alliance or Xianhuan, it didn't seem right to send either team. According to the rules, it was always the national champion. But as the esports competition became more intense, China started to pay more attention to it. They couldn't lose too badly in the Asian esports competition. Hence, the committee was still considering. The fans were worried sick for the votes, all for the team in their hearts. But they didn't know. Supreme Alliance seemed to be fulfilling the wish of the past. To win back the glory of the past, to not let down the people who had supported and liked them. Now the dust had settled. They would probably do their own things. Feng Yi was the one who understood the current situation of the team the most. When the media came for an interview, he basically rejected all that he could. But there was still a video on the internet. It was a video from many years ago, when Qin had just entered the esports industry and won the Best Newcomer King. Some people said that Almighty Qin was so tender, handsome and noble that it gave off a murderous aura. Can you tell us how you fell in love with gaming? This was the host's question. Qin glanced at the camera. When I was young, there was a guy who loved to play games. Which means you came to play games because of that person. The host seemed to have caught the scent of gossip. Qin voice was calm but firm. Yes. For a moment, the host didn't know how to continue. She thought he would deny it, but he admitted it so readily. Hence she was stunned. The video had awakened the memories of many old fans of Qin. At that time, they had been wondering who the guy that their Almighty was talking about was. But from what their Almighty had said, they should be childhood friends. But for a childhood friend to become an esports player, this relationship was too unusual. Hence, they had searched within the industry and finally found Xiao Jing. That was how the Qin and Xiao couple came to be. But now that they thought about it, they always doubted the existence of that person. Almighty Qin's love life could be said to be lacking until Spade Z's appearance. They were even more suspicious that Almighty Qin had made up an excuse to avoid trouble. But the new fans didn't seem to know the reason, which was why the video became popular again. Someone even tagged Bojio. Big Spade, you have to watch Almighty Qin, he might climb the wall. Climbing the wall means breaking Almighty Qin's legs. It's impossible in this lifetime. So Big Spade, my condolences. But if you look again, the Almighty at that time was really young and arrogant. He's still arrogant now. When Big Spade is around, he's still very gentle. She was tagged on the official Weibo. Chapter 1032. On the screen was the Almighty's younger self. It was the fight at the Fifth Avenue. She hadn't taken a close look at the Almighty's appearance. Hence, her memory was filled with his proud and independent figure, as well as the time he had grabbed her wrist, the beautiful curve of his chin amidst the broken light. Now, the Almighty from so many years ago was in front of her. Her attention wasn't on his cold and handsome face. Instead, it was on his words. When I was young, there was a youngster who loved to game. Which means you're gaming because of that person. Yes. When he said the last word, he looked into the camera. He looked like a youngster with thin lips and a high-nose bridge, his eyes so dark they seemed to glow. Bojio gulped. When they had been young, he hadn't gamed often and had spent most of his time with her. When she had brought the keyboard over, she had shown him the simple code she had written. It was a small game that could be operated by pressing the up and down buttons. Her heart had been filled with joy. Afterward, he had wiped her hands and told her that he could play with her, but she couldn't play with others. If she got dirty and rubbed herself against him, he wouldn't like it. This was easy to achieve. Hence, in the afternoon she had plugged in the keyboard and set up a game target. The two of them had played the King of Fighters together. She could still remember his question, "You like it?" MMH. At that time she had been looking at his prideful and fair face and had blurted out that she liked it. She hadn't expected the Almighty to think that she liked the game. Bojio's fingers pressed down on the mouse, pausing on the interview. She rewound slightly and listened to the two sentences again. After listening to it 3 to 4 times, her lips curved upwards. She looked at the comments from her fans. Bojio took a long time to suppress the words, "I'm the one who loves to game, the one the Almighty can't forget." "What are you doing?" A voice drifted into her ears, elegant with a hint of laziness. It was slow and deep, but it was enough to send chills down her spine. Bojio pressed the words she had typed and closed Weibo. She glanced up with a smile. Browsing the internet. With her movements, the loose collar slid down, revealing the skin underneath. It was porcelain white and smooth, the shade of his collarbone just right. It was beautiful, just like milk. Chinamo seemed to have just taken a shower. He hadn't dried his hair and it was dripping wet. When he saw this scene, his gaze deepened. "Come here." "Huh?" The young man didn't move, his hand still holding the mouse. Chinamo walked over, reaching out to pull her clothes up. "Mind your image, Mrs. Chin." Hearing these 3 words again, Bojio blushed and changed the topic. "What did Madame Zhang do?" "Xilong bao with bean meat." Chinamo arched a brow. "What? You don't like it?" Bojio reached out and hugged him. "I like it." Chinmo's fingers paused for a moment. His gaze was a little dim. No one knew what he was thinking. 2 people came up from downstairs. The steaming soup dumplings had just come out of the oven. Although it was called Xilong bao, it was steamed at home, and it was many times more delicious than the ones outside. The surface was soft and chewy, and when the filling was bitten, it left a fragrant taste in the mouth. She thought that 1 basket was enough for the 2 of them. But in the end, when Madame Zhang saw the youngster biting on the last meat bun, she raised her head and asked if she had any more. That was when Madame Zhang realized that she had made too little for breakfast. "I'll steam another basket now," Madame Zhang said. Chinamo replied, "There's no need. She'll have a stomachache when she's full." Bojio was still greedy. She lay there, full of energy. Chinamo felt that this scene was a little familiar, but he couldn't pinpoint where he had seen it before. But the person in front of him seemed to have shrunk a lot. She was still muttering, "Momo, can you let me eat another meat bun?" "I'll eat another one." "You've said this 5 times. It was his voice. "Ah, you gave me all 5, I don't need a 6th one." 66, this number is auspicious. The little fellow was always reasonable. He didn't speak, his fingers pressing on her round tummy. He only said 2 words, "Shut up." The image was blurry and ethereal as though it didn't exist. Chinmo's mind went blank for a moment. When he turned back, the youngster was tugging on his sleeve, her eyes filled with worry. "Is your hand hurting again?" Compared to a certain someone, he didn't care much about his hand. "It doesn't hurt." Chinmo placed his chopsticks down, freeing his other hand to press her hand down and hold it in his own. They even had to hold hands while eating. Madame Zhang really didn't know what to say. She tried her best not to disturb them. She placed the food down with a smile and walked into the kitchen. She sent a voice message to Movie Queen and, "Madam, don't worry. There's nothing wrong with young Master Jio." Movie Queen and calmed down slightly when she saw the message. She was worried about Mo's psychological problems. She heard that Jiang City had just calmed down, but the overall situation wasn't good. Even without her husband's words, Movie Queen and could vaguely sense that something was wrong. Otherwise, that person wouldn't have appeared for so many days and even sent someone to protect her. Movie Queen and was fine, but her son was the main problem. She was worried that the case from that year wasn't over. Time passed slowly. Especially for a university. Ever since the live broadcast at the square, the police had their eyes on a certain university. Some were grumbling, some were afraid as though something was about to happen. In the canteen many were discussing it. Fanjia, why don't you look afraid? Someone asked the student beside her. Fanjia chuckled. What's there to be afraid of? Which student in a university isn't outstanding? The police are probably anxious to solve the case, that's why they believe the comments online. Besides, this has nothing to do with us. After hearing what she said, someone frowned. I don't think it's completely unrelated. Don't you watch the news? That person has done so many terrible things. Not only did he encourage others to commit suicide, but he also instigated others to infringe on copyright. In the end, he even killed the original author. Isn't that a terrible thing? What we need to do now is to cooperate with the police. Honestly, regardless of whether it's someone from a university, I hope to catch the culprit as soon as possible. I have a feeling that the culprit is inhumane. Chapter 1033. There are so many murderers in the world, why aren't you so righteous? What's wrong with you today? Fanjia chuckled lightly. I only said one sentence, why did you say so much? The girl glanced at her. There are many murderers, but no matter how many there are, it's still wrong. Besides, this isn't about righteousness, it's the foundation of being human. Fanjia chuckled. Alright, it's something so far away, why are you thinking about it? Fanjia isn't wrong. Ever since Z's live stream, the police have been investigating every day. It's so annoying and the others are brainless, messing up the school. Do you think Z has a grudge with the murderer? He didn't kill him, why is he so meddlesome? Everything was fine at first. Everything was fine. The girl stopped eating, her brows furrowing. She couldn't understand what was wrong with her two classmates. Wasn't it right to arrest the murderer? If it hadn't been for the live stream, the murdered author wouldn't have been able to seek redress. If it hadn't been for the protection of the police, the murderer hiding in their school would have acted long ago. They wouldn't have known who the next victim would be. If it hadn't been for everyone's combined strength, some truths and grievances would have been buried in the darkness forever, never to see the light of day. Why did all good deeds have a different flavor when spoken by two people? The girl felt a chill in her heart. It was an indescribable chill. She even questioned herself why people were like this. For example, the girl who had advised her just now. She had been bright and innocent when she entered school. Even though she liked to go with the flow, she hadn't said anything like that. What did it mean to have a grudge against the murderer? Exposing and arresting such an inhumane murderer was the only way to protect everyone. The girl was an ordinary person, she didn't have the ability to do so. She was thankful for those who had the ability and were willing to risk their lives to do so. It was written in a book. When you opened your eyes every day to the bustling traffic, it was the most ordinary peaceful era. It was a place where blood was exchanged. Why did they blame the people who bled but not the murderer? The girl couldn't understand. When her roommate brought up another case, she shrugged her shoulders. Also, as a passerby, let's talk about the original author you mentioned earlier. She's already dead, so what? Why did she have to go against the copyright infringers? Isn't she a little too petty? Besides, didn't you notice that after this incident, the sales of her books increased? I'm not saying that she's trying to create hype, but that's the truth. Not only is it morally impermissible, it's also the same from a legal perspective. That's the root of the matter. Also, you didn't say that the original work was hyping things up, but that's what you meant. Since it's so offensive, don't pretend to judge others. I don't think we're suited to be friends anymore. Your arguments are too scary, so you better watch out. It was indeed terrifying. The girl couldn't tell what was wrong. She knew that he used to be a person without any ideas. But after sleeping with Fanjia, he seemed to have changed. It was as though he had been influenced by Fanjia to the point where his entire being was distorted. She wasn't sure if this was normal, but she instinctively wanted to distance herself. Fanjia watched the girl's back view, breaking into a smile. She comforted the angry classmate beside her. Why are you arguing with her? Let her speak if she wants to. She doesn't have any aura at all, she's completely different from you. The classmate broke into a smile. Indeed, it's boring. Alright, Fanjia, many people joined the chat group you asked me to create previously. I named it Spade Z and it attracted a lot of fans, but some people suspected that I wasn't a fan of Spade Z. Thankfully, the friends in the group helped me and now, everyone has the same opinion. You're too smart, just a few words and they change their minds. That's how it should be. Some people have nothing better to do. If they want to kill someone, then so be it. What has it got to do with us? I had the same thoughts as you, that's why I asked you to create the group. But you have to understand that some people are troublesome, hence, it's better to keep the group a secret. Fanjia's mood finally lifted. We have to clear a university's name. That's right. The classmate was filled with fighting spirit. Helping a tyrant to do evil had become a way to clear their name. In reality, if it wasn't for such people, Fanjia wouldn't have known how to escape. The crime squad that Z had recruited made it impossible for her to do anything else. That wasn't all. Every time she touched the computer, someone would record it. The maiden's sacrifice had been interrupted. Not only had she lost 2 helpers, but she had also lost the endless supply of goods. Her brother's plan back then was to control people's thoughts and make use of them. She majored in psychology just like Chinemo. She could tell a person's thoughts from their actions. Those who liked Spade Z had joined the private chat group even though they knew about the announcement. This meant that they only cared about their likes and didn't care about hurting others. This way the foundation would be laid. She would follow their thoughts and give them a few hints. Those people would become her invisible helpers. As long as she tore open this hole and used the group to influence them, planting a seed in their hearts, a university would become hers in the future. If the crime squad found out something, it would be Spade Z's fault since the group was created under his name. After Fanjia was done, the organization urged her twice but she didn't return. Instead she gave them a call. Let's wait for a few more days. What are you waiting for? If you don't leave now you might be found. Chapter 1034. Your brother hypnotized Chinemo? That person was in disbelief. Chinemo has always been an expert in psychology. That's why he was the one who solved that case. After all, they were both studying abroad. Your brother's grades were always lower than Chinmo's. That's the truth. Besides, the Qin family has been the same for generations. They aren't affected by external factors. How could your brother hypnotize Chinemo? Fanjia, it's true that we're working together, but don't you dare use your tricks on me. Fanjia knew that ever since Z had appeared, the old man had been afraid. He had been cautious when helping her and now he was even giving her a warning. This is such an important trump card. Do you think I would lie? Fanjia stood in the darkness, her eyes looking into the distance. She spoke slowly, I have Z to thank for this. If it wasn't for her, Chinemo wouldn't be in so much pain. The hypnosis was planted by my brother before he died. At that time, Chinemo was in a state of mental breakdown. Naturally, he wouldn't be guarded against my brother. Besides, based on what I know, not only did Chinemo stop working on cases, his memory is also in a mess. When the time is right, I can make use of this. Are you still anxious? There was a moment of silence. You have interacted with Chinemo in the past and understand him. I still have the same advice, don't be too reckless. If it wasn't for me covering up for your 2 partners, you would be in a much more dangerous situation. The crime squad is starting to investigate the Rao family's case. Once the truth comes to light, I will be implicated and Rao Rong's statement will be detrimental to both of us. Fanjia's gaze deepened. That's why you should have buried Rao Rong when you were working on that case. I've advised you before, you think you can do whatever you want with your power. He's just a high school student. How dare you talk to me about this now? The person on the other end was obviously furious. How many times have I told you to let Rao Rong off and he wouldn't retaliate? In the end, you cooperated with the club and chased him out of the team, leaving him with no place in the esports industry. Do you know how much effort I had to put in to avoid him? Fortunately, I didn't appeal to the higher-ups. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to climb to my current position. Yet, you didn't learn from your mistakes and insisted on using him. Fanjia narrowed her eyes. It's all in the past, let's not talk about it anymore. Back then, I looked for him when he was in despair. Who knew he would break free from my control? In the end, it was all because of Z. She actually didn't die. I find it suspicious. It doesn't matter if it's strange or not. The person seemed to be tired of the current situation. The problem now is that she's back. Once Z returns, your internet skills won't be enough. Fanjia hated to hear such words. There are many things that can't be solved with internet skills. No matter how impressive Z is, she can't guarantee what others think. I've been in a university for so long, I'm prepared. Didn't I say that even if I leave now, the seeds I leave behind will sprout in some people's hearts? What did you do to the people in a university? The person on the other end frowned. We had a deal when we cooperated. You can't be like your brother. Fanjia laughed. I said, how can I not be like my brother? How can I make use of everyone around me? Didn't you know from the start? It's too late to act surprised now. It wasn't just a university, there were many 14-year-olds. I have to thank them, otherwise my plan wouldn't have gone so smoothly. I used Z to commit crimes and they imagined themselves to be whoever they liked. They took their names and used it to attract popularity. That's the type of person I need. It's much easier to control now compared to my brother. After all, no one is clean, including you. You. The person on the other side of the phone was furious. For a moment he regretted working with the other party, but he had already come this far. He could only move forward and not retreat. Forget it as long as you are confident. Fan Jia's gaze dimmed. Of course I'm confident. Rao Rome wasn't around anymore, she could create another Rao Rome. It was time for the youngster who liked to stick to Qin Imo to suffer, 10 p.m. at the Qin family's house. In order to show her sincerity, Bo Jio fished out her wallet and placed it on Qin Mo's hand. The Almighty sat on the sofa with one hand wrapped in bandages. There was a book on Sun Tzu's Art of War and a pot of tea on the table. Bo Jio always said that the Almighty had an immortal aura around him, and it wasn't without reason. The moment he sat there, he looked like a noble young master. When he saw the wallet the youngster placed on his hand, Qin Imo arched a brow, his gaze calm. What's the meaning of this? Are you flaunting your wealth? Bo Jio laughed, stuffing a hand into her pocket. She lowered her body, a mischievous smile on her face. Brother Mo's sugar daddy. Qin Imo paused. Bo Jio smiled brightly, waiting to see his reaction. It was a pity that Qin Imo was still scheming. You're giving me too little, a few hundred isn't even worth a meal. Do you know how much it costs outside? Bo Jio arched a brow. There's a market for that? What else? Qin Mo's long fingers tapped the wallet. Bo Jio knelt down, a smile on her face. Brother Imo, how much is it? $1 million for a meal, Qin Imo replied calmly. Bo Jio muttered, that's too expensive. It was better to just kidnap him. Tell me, what do you want with your wallet? Qin Imo fiddled with the wallet, something flashing past his eyes. Bo Jio stood up, dressed in a pure white shirt and long pants. With her silver hair, she looked like a prince that had fallen to the mortal world. I want to settle some matters at home before I head overseas, in case someone bullies Madam He when I'm not around. I'll leave my identity card with Brother Imo to prove that I'm a legitimate pretty boy. Qin Imo reached out to pour himself a cup of tea, his face handsome as he spoke nonchalantly. From what you're saying, you aren't coming back after going overseas? Bo Jio paused, her lips lifting. If I'm filming a movie, I won't be staying there for long. With my mother around, I can't travel far. Since I have my own matters to attend to, I can only let those who can harm my mother rest before I leave. Just rest? Qin Imo glanced up, his deep gaze meeting the youngster's face. Chapter 1035. After listening to the youngster, Qin Imo took a sip of tea. Qin Imo took a sip of tea and said faintly, empty shares. His words hit the nail on the head. Bo Jio enjoyed chatting with the Almighty because there wasn't a need to explain things clearly. It was relaxing. Unexpectedly, the Almighty's next sentence was a twist. Is that all you're capable of? Her cold tone carried the unique arrogance of a person in a superior position. The aura of a CEO was evident. Bo Jio recalled what the Almighty used to say in the business world. It could be summed up in one sentence. Brother Imo's society, you're beautiful and rich. She should be able to learn from him. Brother Imo, if you have any good ideas, I can buy them. The youngster pointed to her wallet with a bright smile. Qin Imo lifted his finger. You want me to give you ideas for such a small amount of money? I know you're expensive, Bo Jio replied seriously. Can I give you a friendship price? Qin Imo hooked his finger at the youngster. He had an ancient aura and was full of asceticism. Bo Jio followed his movements and leaned forward. His deep voice rang in her ears. As your husband, I can teach you a few moves. As for the friendship price, I don't have it here. Do you want it? I'm already leaning in and you're asking me if I want it? Also, what the hell was that, husband? You're a modern person, why are you talking about ancient literature? You seem more like someone who has been reborn than me. Bo Jio's ears turned red as she thought about it. Compared to controlling their shares, sending them home to retire would make them feel worse. Qin Imo finally returned to the tone of a modern person. He looked at the youngster's face, which was so clean that even his hair could be seen, and kissed it. Bo Jio was still seriously learning from him. She hadn't expected the side of her face to be touched. By the time she realized what it was already too late. The reflection on the glass window caught the youngster's slender figure stiffening. Even her eyes moved. Her lashes were long and she looked slightly dazed. Bo Jio stuffed a hand into her pocket, her other hand pressed against the seat. She had originally been prepared to tease him, but now, it was a completely different situation. Brother Imo, just speak, don't touch me, you're making a mistake. Qin Imo watched the youngster's serious expression and smiled. What mistake do you want to make? This was considered seduction, right? The Almighty was simply a demon. Bo Jio endured for a long time, not wavering in front of his beauty. She couldn't tell anyone that she wanted to kidnap the Almighty. Questions that were difficult to answer were all replaced with silence as golden. Qin Imo raised his hand to glance at the time. The Qin Group's legal consultant has already gone to your company. He has some documents that I prepared for you. You can take a look at them when you are free. But one thing, come back immediately after the meeting. Otherwise, I will have to handcuff you. Bojio paused. Then she lifted her lips. My baby is still here, how can I not come back? Qin Imo, treasure? Bah. Qin Imo frowned and wanted to pull the youngster over to teach him a lesson. Auntie Zhang came over with freshly baked red bean pastries. Under normal circumstances, Earl black tea with red bean pastries was considered real tea. This was how the Qin family drank tea. Who would have thought that the moment he arrived, he would hear young Master Jiao calling young Master Bao? Bao. Why did she feel that the world was spinning so unreal? Young Master was indeed the one at the bottom. Chapter 1036. Both Qin Imo and Bojio understood the meaning written on Madame Zhang's face. It wasn't because Bojio was well-versed in micro-expressions, but Madame Zhang's expression was obvious and she couldn't help but feel happy about the misunderstanding. Bojio smiled faintly as she straightened her back. Her silver hair fell down and the pure black earrings on her ears gave off a clean and handsome aura. When he walked towards Auntie Zhang, he also had a magnanimous and aggressive look. On the other hand, Qin Imo had been frowning. Madame Zhang shook her head. She looked as though she had understood. She placed the red bean snacks down and glanced at her young master. At this moment, Qin Imo broke into a smile. He glanced at the youngster who had just finished his naughty deed, his tone calm. If you aren't back in 2 hours, I will head to the Fu family's house personally. Brother Imo, with your current status, it isn't suitable for you to mingle with a small organization like the Fu family, really? In order to prevent herself from being carried back, Bojio had to stop him. Qin Imo replied, Oh? He raised his voice. I don't really care. Bojio. There was no way to continue the conversation. In the end, when the youngster left, Qin Imo stood up. When he sent her out, his gaze was so deep that Bojio felt that something wasn't right. Just as she was deep in thought, her phone rang. Bojio glanced at the chauffeur. She didn't pick up the call. After hanging up, she sent a message. There's a change in plans. The 4 words made Hoshino, who was lying on the balcony, sit up. The sun shone on his back, and even his white shirt seemed to be emitting a gentle glow. His slender fingers pressed on it. How did it change? I will be going overseas with Qin Imo tomorrow to act in a movie. I can use this opportunity to escape. Bojio's gaze wasn't fixed on her phone when she typed. Her arms hung down naturally. Even if the chauffeur was sitting in front, he wouldn't notice her message. Hoshino caressed his black hair, his smile warm. MMH, it's convenient overseas. There's a little inconvenient. Bojio took a moment before sending the message. Hoshino walked towards the computer. What is it? I want to kidnap Qin Imo. Since they had started, the next step was straightforward. When Hoshino saw the line of words on his phone, his hand that was about to touch the teacup suddenly stopped. Even his expression was a little different than usual. It was rare to see the vice captain like this. The youth stood there dumbfounded. What was going on? Could it be that the vice captain wasn't satisfied with his performance just now? He did die once, but that was a 1v5. The baby-faced youth was still trembling. Although the vice captain had a good temper. The better the temper, the more chills they would feel when they were disciplining you. What he imagined didn't happen. The youth saw the vice captain put down the teacup in his hand and paused for a moment. Then he pressed the phone a few times as if he was replying to someone's message. The baby-faced man didn't understand. Yusishin sat there with his long legs crossed. His black hair fell down. He was devilishly handsome. Someone isn't feeling good. When Hoshino heard that, he didn't say anything. He couldn't say that he didn't feel good. But he didn't expect Z to like Qin Imo so much that she wanted to kidnap him. In Hoshino's heart, that person would always be lonely. Even when he was by her side, it was the same. She lived a carefree and sunny life. No matter how many people she interacted with, it never changed. When she was injured, she wouldn't cry out in pain. But every time when she was quiet, she would stare outside in a daze. She had never really wanted anything. Except for this time. Hoshino couldn't describe how he felt. Just then, another message appeared on his phone. I know it's difficult. If you don't do it well, your identity might be exposed. I'm worried that Qin Imo is already suspicious of you. Don't make a move and stay in the team. Hoshino frowned slightly after reading the message. You will be in danger. It's equally dangerous for 2 people. Bojio's hand paused. Then she added, don't worry, Hoshino reached out and rubbed his temples. He knew that no matter what he said, Z wouldn't get rid of this thought. Kidnapping Chinamo was a very dangerous matter. But Z's decision would never be changed. Just as Hoshino was in a daze, his phone was suddenly snatched away. Was Xixing. He still had that signature smile on his face. It often made people think of the hot-blooded second-generation gangster in high school. He stuffed his left hand into his pocket. Let me see what you sent. Hoshino's movement sped up. That speed made Xixing narrow his eyes. Hiding it like this makes people even more suspicious. Hoshino held his phone. His eyes were clear and his voice was the same as usual. Looking at other people's privacy doesn't seem like something you should do. Xixing raised his hands. Alright, here you go. Then he tilted his head and his voice came over. Chinamo is already suspicious of you. You should restrain yourself. Don't go against the wind and commit crimes. Hoshino raised his eyebrows. He was as gentle as jade and elegant as a gentleman. All right. He agreed so readily that Xixing didn't know what else to say. The baby-faced person watched this scene. He felt that there was something strange between his captain and vice-captain, but he couldn't tell what was strange. 10:30 p.m. Fu Group. In the end, there were waves of heavy losses. Fu Group wasn't as glorious as it used to be. Fu Ximing, the young master who could have gotten all of Fu Group's shares just by waiting, also participated in the fight for the shares. He had already contacted many shareholders in private. During this meeting he had to make that useless person leave with his mother. That was because he had long been prepared. In addition, Fu Zhongyi had been collecting a lot of dirt on his son. Hence, when this pair of father and son appeared, they were extremely confident. As the saying went, with a stepmother there would be a stepfather. Fu Zhongyi had always been a scumbag. Even though they were both his children, he had never felt any guilt towards his eldest son. When Bojio didn't know anything, he wasn't willing to talk about his son at all. When others talked about him, there was a complete rejection and slight disgust in his eyes. Now that Bojio knew everything, he didn't have any thoughts of repentance. Instead, he participated in every dirt on Spade Z. When he treated Fu Ximing, he wanted to leave everything to him. He had never stopped praising him. The worst thing about Fu Zhongyi wasn't that he had betrayed his marriage with xianxia. The worst thing about him was that he had abandoned his wife and son, forcing them into a corner. He had long forgotten that if it hadn't been for xianxia, there wouldn't have been the Fu Group today. He had forced people to their deaths at every turn. He was ruthless and inhumane. But that was how humans were. In the face of huge benefits, no one would show their humanity. Some of the shareholders sitting in the office were the same. Xianxia was still flipping through the documents. When she saw Fu Ximing enter, her eyes dimmed. Unrelated people don't have the right to participate in the board meeting. Fu Zhongyi didn't even look at Xianxia as he led Fu Ximing to a seat. There are no unrelated people here. Ximing now has shares of the Fu Corporation. You probably don't know this, but the change in ownership this time is going to be drastic. Alright Ximing, tell me about some of the videos you've obtained. Those who have tarnished the reputation of the Fu Corporation, no matter how high their positions are, should be expelled. Alright. Fu Ximing stood up. During this period of time, because of that trash, everything he did wasn't going smoothly. Especially after that trash won the National League, he would be compared by the people around him. He knew better than anyone what that trash was like in the past. He was a piece of trash that couldn't be helped. He didn't know how he had gotten to where he was today because of young Master Qin. Now was the time to let everyone know what kind of person he was. Fu Ximing turned on his laptop and projected some photos on the projector. He said in a dignified manner, "These are the things I got. Big Brother's private life has always been messy. As long as he doesn't go overboard, no one will care about him. However, the Fu Corporation can't have such a shareholder who painstakingly pours himself on men. Even outsiders say that the Fu Corporation became famous because of this. I think it's worth everyone to think about this. After all, the most important thing in doing business is reputation." Compared to Xianxia in the past, she was much calmer now. She sat in her seat without much emotion on her face, but her words were cold. Speaking of reputation, everyone in the marketing and operation department knows that all the hot-selling products of the Fu Corporation or the companies that are contacting us are all because of Spade Z's name. Besides, I have never heard of anyone claiming that the Fu Corporation relied on others to get their hands on us. As for you, you have been using the fact that I am Spade Z's younger brother to open up your circle of friends in the business world. This topic has been spreading like wildfire in the industry. Ximing, your brother's reputation is so bad, why are you still using him? Fu Ximing's face turned red and white when he was interrupted. He didn't expect that a certain son had taught Xianxia that the business world was like war. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy could you win 100 battles. The thing that Fu Ximing didn't want others to know was exposed like this. Also, the gazes around them had obviously changed. Chapter 1037. My dear nephew's words are reasonable. Just as Xianxia was about to say something, a man in his 50s interrupted her with a smile. I don't deny the benefits brought by Spade Z's name, but when doing business, we have to pay attention to variables. Originally, this matter would have been settled and we wouldn't have interfered, right? But now, everything will be announced in the afternoon. When that happens, Spade Z's name won't be able to bring benefits to the company. Xuanhuan, let me say something from a neutral point of view. Sometimes you really need to discipline our young master Fu. I know you guys have a lot of shares now and your words are tough, but this isn't how the company does things. You have to understand the people sitting here, some things have gone overboard and we will consider withdrawing our investment. I think so too. The company's reputation will definitely be affected when there's a problem with the shareholders. It doesn't matter how much we received in the past, the most important thing is that there's a problem now. Since there's a problem, I think we have to deal with it. At the very least, we have to get our young master Fu to explain himself. Don't you agree? Yeah, once this matter blows up, we are also worried about whether we can get our money back. When Xianxia heard this, she felt disgusted. These people. How could they be so shameless? All the customer analysis is on the data. The profits brought by Spade Z's name are enough for you to get a year's worth of dividends without doing anything. Are you asking for an explanation? You are using withdrawing your investment to pressure us. When the man in his 50s heard this, he spoke again. When have we ever pressured you? Your misunderstanding is really displeasing. Xuanhuan, I am starting to doubt whether you are suitable to be the chairman of the board of directors. When Fu Ximing heard this, he put on an act and said, Uncle Li, don't get angry. Mr. He, Big Bro has made a fatal mistake in the company. As shareholders, we all have the right to ask for an explanation. It doesn't seem right for you to misunderstand us like this. No matter how big of a grudge you have against me in private, you don't want to see me here. However, every single one of our suggestions is for the company to be better. You misunderstand us like this and it really leaves us speechless. Xianxia was caught in a pincer attack by these two people. With just one look, it was obvious that they had come prepared. Those who didn't know better would think that Xianxia was petty. In reality, one person was playing the bad cop while the other was playing the good cop. In the end, they were the ones who were good for the company. Think about who owns this company now, and whose breakthrough in quality is the reason why the profit points are profitable. Xianxia clenched her fists. Fu Ximing stood to the side and said, It's useless to just explain about this matter. Director, he should apologize to everyone on behalf of Big Brother. Apologize? Xianxia's face turned red with anger. Are you dreaming? Fu Ximing shook his head as if he couldn't reason with a shrew. Forget it, nephew. It's useless for you to say so much to her. If you were the CEO of the company, I wouldn't have to worry so much. The man stood up and was about to leave. He had no intention of respecting Xianxia at all. I can't attend this shareholders' meeting anymore. I'll come back after I see some sincerity. However, as soon as he finished speaking, click, the door of the conference room was pushed open. Chapter 1038. Fu Ximing shook his head, looking as though there was no way he could reason with a shrew. Forget it, nephew, there's no point in talking to her. If you were the CEO of the company, I wouldn't have to worry so much. He stood up and was about to leave without any intention of respecting Xianxia. I won't be able to continue with the shareholders' meeting. I'll come back after I see the sincerity of some people. However, the moment he finished his sentence, cut up. The meeting room door was pushed open. A clear but cold voice slowly rang in everyone's ears, like ice cubes soaked in sake. The voice wasn't fast or slow, it was deep and neutral. They couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, but it was so pleasant that it was hard not to notice. There's no need for that. From today onwards, Boss Lee, you're kicked out. That one sentence broke the silence. In an instant, everyone turned to look at the source of the voice. A youngster stood there, her silver hair matched perfectly with a suit. Her collar wasn't tied tightly, instead, it was slightly loosened. Her tall and slender figure was cut by the light. She was elegant and handsome, a living young master of an aristocratic family. Some people froze. After all, no one had expected that the next time they saw this useless person, he would be even more dazzling than before. Other than the previous shareholders' meeting, which had shocked everyone, this time there was an indescribable aura. It was as though an ancient sword had finally been unsheathed from its scabbard, shining with its original brilliance. The expression on Boss Li's face seemed to have been sucked out, leaving only anger. What do you mean? What I said. Bo Jio walked over, supporting herself with one hand on the meeting table. She smiled. Boss Li, don't you want to withdraw your investment? Sure, from today onwards you're kicked out. Manager Li laughed. Some people think they're so great just because they're good at gaming. Alright, let's divest, right? Everyone heard it. With such a small shareholder, the company's profits won't be any better in the future. If we don't divest, do we still have a way out? Brother Li, Fu Zhongyi stepped forward and patted him on the shoulder. All these years, we all know how much you have done for the company. Don't worry, we won't let anyone force you to leave. The most important thing to do in a business is to learn to be grateful. It seems that some people are clearly not suitable to be the decision makers of the group. I'm sure everyone here knows who is right and who is wrong. At this point, Fu Zhongyi turned his head and looked at everyone in the meeting room. Everyone can see that my son is full of hostility and doesn't respect these elderly uncles at all. This goes against the ideals we had when we started our business. I suggest that we start with the highest voting rights. No matter how many shares we have, the one with the most votes will be the one to manage the lawsuit. When Manager Li heard that, he immediately said, yes, activate the highest voting rights. The company cannot be destroyed by such an arrogant person. When Xuanhuan heard this, there was an obvious anxiety on her face. She had never imagined that Fu Zhongyi would have the cheek to say that the most important thing in business was gratitude. The people who had started the business with him had all been kicked out of the company by him with all kinds of excuses. And this Manager Li was one of the people who had squeezed out other people's positions back then. What credit? What credit does he have? When these words came out of their mouths, Xuanhuan only felt a wave of disgust, a disgust that came from the bottom of her heart. How can there be such a shameless person? And the other party even wanted to use this reason to activate the highest voting rights? It was not easy for Chujio to get back her shares. It was so that she could have the absolute right to speak. Once the highest voting rights were activated, all of her previous efforts will be in vain. From the moment they entered the room, the other people were very quiet. Obviously, they had made a deal with Fu Zhongyi behind his back. So they acquiesced to Fu Zhongyi's words. When Xuanhuan saw the situation, she was very anxious and wanted to say something. The youngster just sat there and said casually, credit? When did Manager Li do anything that is beneficial to the company? Aren't you always getting rebates for purchases? Who are you saying is getting rebates? Manager Li exploded on the spot. I'm telling you, don't slander me. The youngster looked at him and said very slowly, Lawyer Bai. Lawyer Bai? Which Lawyer Bai? When Lawyer Bai is mentioned, the first thing that people think of is the word Bai. Manager Li's face turned pale for a moment. No, impossible, it can't be that Lawyer Bai. Unfortunately, his prayers did not have much effect in the end. A certain someone in a suit walked in from the door. He was carrying a briefcase in his hand. His handsome face almost became the living sign of the entire lawyer world. Ordinary people may not know this person, but those in the business circle know him. Because no matter how low the case was, he was able to completely reverse the situation. At this time, even Fu Zhongyi's smiling face stiffened. Not to mention Manager Li, who was speaking righteously just now. How is this possible? How can he hire Lawyer Bai? Basically, many people know how difficult it is to get an appointment with Lawyer Bai. It is said that he has been appearing in court for a year. Previously, there was a very rich boss who gave Lawyer Bai 1 million yuan. But Lawyer Bai ignored him and asked him to meet him in order. Some people also inquired about how a small lawyer can have such a big ability. After all, there is no one in this world who doesn't like money. But no matter how much they inquired, they couldn't find out about Lawyer Bai's family background. Some people in the business circle wanted him to help with urgent matters, but Lawyer Bai didn't agree even once. Now, he had actually appeared here, and he was even invited by that useless young master who had no connections at all. How could Manager Li not be afraid? Even his arrogance was a little weaker than before. Fu Zhongyi clenched his fists, moving to block the way. Lawyer Bai, who was holding the briefcase, stopped and glanced at Fu Zhongyi. Fu Zhongyi smiled. Lawyer Bai, I know you received money, so you had to make a trip here. How about this? I can double the amount that the person who doesn't care about the company gave you. Fu Zhongyi's words were especially generous. He didn't look like he was broke when the company was in trouble. However, after Fu Zhongyi finished his sentence, Lawyer Bai revealed a mocking smile. He walked past Fu Zhongyi, heading towards the youngster. His voice was calm. Boss, can we begin, boss? Was he calling young Master Fu? Was that possible? Gasps could be heard in the entire conference room, mainly due to the shock. Fu Zhongyi's expression froze completely, as though he had been punched in the face. Who could have imagined that the famous lawyer Bai would call a high school student, boss? And this high school student used to be a love-struck trash. It was simply unimaginable. But the truth was right in front of them. The youngster knocked on the table with one hand, his aura unchanged. Even though lawyer Bai was standing beside him, the formless aura didn't waver. Instead, he spoke with a mocking tone akin to a vampire. Throw the information on what Manager Li has done all these years to him. The spare parts were originally cheap, but in order to get more commission he doubled the price of the supplier. No wonder the Fu Corporation's profits are so low. From the start, someone has disregarded the company's profits and reaped huge benefits. According to the company's rules, the shareholder with the biggest share has the right to kick out the shareholder who damages the company. After being exposed of what he had been doing recently, Manager Li's expression changed. It was as if all the blood had drained from his face. But that wasn't the end. The youngster got lawyer Bai to print out all the relevant information, handing a copy to each of the shareholders. Bo Jiu continued, "You can come in and take him away." The other shareholders glanced at each other. They had assumed it was the usual security guards who had come to take him away. When they saw that the person who came was wearing a police uniform and handcuffs, all of their foreheads broke out in cold sweat. Manager Li's eyes widened. Lawyer Bai pushed his spectacles up his nose, his tone calm and emotionless. As Mr. Li had embezzled a huge sum of money during his work, from today onwards, we have officially filed a lawsuit against him. It seems like there's a conclusion. Which meant that the police had verified the information and were here to arrest him. Boss Li was really done for this time. Relatively speaking. Fu Zhongyi and Fu Ximing's plan had been disrupted halfway. Some of them watched as Manager Li was brought out. They had already lost half of their courage. Besides, this wasn't the end. The youngster on the boss's chair laughed again, her tone calm. "I heard someone wants to withdraw his investment? Which uncle is it? Stand up for me." The fat man who had helped Manager Li and Fu Zhongyi to suppress xuanhuan was sweating profusely. The sound of the metal cuffs on Manager Li's hands made him feel as though he was going to end up the same way. He had only taken Fu Zhongyi's money and helped them verbally. He had no intention of withdrawing his investment. After all, there were 3 or 4 people who wanted to rebel. In the current Fu Corporation, if they didn't do something, they could be eliminated at any time. This wasn't the life they wanted. They just wanted money, they didn't want to do anything. Fu Zhongyi had clearly said that as long as he could regain control of the Fu Corporation, his dividends would increase by 20% and even his position would rise. But he had never expected things to turn out this way. Chapter 1039. Boss Zhang. The youngster's voice was as pleasant as ever, carrying a hint of indolence and coldness. The fat man who was pointed at trembled and stared at his wrists as if they had been handcuffed. After all, Manager Li was able to successfully get so many rebates because he had a hand in it. "Why aren't you speaking?" Bo Jiu glanced at him, her lips lifting. "Weren't you the one who wanted to withdraw your investment?" Fat Head and Big Ears raised his hand, wiping the sweat off his forehead as he replied anxiously, "No. You didn't?" Bo Jiu stood up and walked over. She bent down and placed both her hands on Fatty and Fu Ximing's chair. The sunlight fell on her lips, making her look like a devil that had walked out of the darkness. Elegant, handsome but dangerous. "I heard that someone wanted me to apologize?" Fu Ximing's eyes lit up. "That's right. I heard that someone wanted me to apologize?" Fat Head and Big Ears trembled again. For some reason, he felt a chill down his spine when he heard the youngster's voice. It was probably because of the fear in his heart. In addition, this person was usually timid. When the higher-ups pressured him to do some things, he would not do it. This resulted in the current situation where people got a lot of kickbacks. Of course, it was also because of his greed. But even so, in that instant he couldn't explain the oppressive aura he felt from the youngster. Change. The only feeling he had was that this wastrel, the useless young master they had never been able to trust, was really different from before. The previous change in the shares wasn't a coincidence. Boss Zhang was so afraid he didn't know what to say. Fu Ximing was still as arrogant as ever, glancing over. "Big brother, shouldn't you apologize for ruining our company's reputation with your usual actions?" "Our company?" Bo Jiu smiled. "It seems like you aren't clear who this company belongs to." Fu Ximing scoffed. "Big brother, I think you are the one who isn't clear. I already have shares in Fu Group, so of course it belongs to our company." "Oh." Bo Jiu arched a brow. "Lawyer Bai, please show everyone the restructured company structure." Lawyer Bai took over Fu Ximing's previous position and inserted the USB drive into the projector. A document was projected out and it was written in black and white, clearly stating the changes to the company. As the document unfolded, both Fu Ximing and Fu Zhongyi's faces darkened. Fu Zhongyi could no longer pretend to be magnanimous. He slammed the table with his right hand. Nonsense. What nonsense? What do you mean by the distribution of shares will be based on performance? You even gave shares to some employees? What are you doing? Do you want all of us to withdraw our investments? Sure. The young man's words landed on Fu Zhongyi's head. Fu Zhongyi looked like he couldn't believe his ears. He paused and said, "What did you say? You can withdraw your investment." Bo Jio's posture didn't change, but her gaze was as sharp as ice. "Let me take this opportunity to tell you something, Boss Fu. You don't have to threaten me with withdrawing my investment. To put it simply, I have money." Fu Zhongyi's breathing changed when he heard the outrageous words. "You mean you want to force us, the old board members, to leave? Fine. I want to see how you are going to operate without our funds. You will be begging us then." Lawyer Bai pushed his spectacles up the bridge of his nose, reminding him, "Boss Fu, you probably haven't finished reading the document Boss asked me to draft. Boss Fu, you can continue reading." With that, Lawyer Bai moved the mouse. The youngster's investment was clearly stated on the document. The numbers weren't mentioned. However, there was one thing. Everyone was stunned when they saw the string of numbers. The entire meeting room was extremely quiet. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop on the ground. It was too much. It was really too much. The string of numbers was so many that Xuanhuan's eyes widened. Her expression was filled with shock. Her Jio, when did she get so much money? Was there such a huge prize for winning an esports competition? This amount was enough to buy 3 Fu enterprises. That meant it was 5 times the amount Fu Zhongyi and the rest had. Xuanhua's first reaction was to turn towards her Jio. The youngster stilled, reaching out to caress her nose. Bo Jio retracted her sharpness when she faced Xuanhua. At this moment, both Fu Zhongyi and Fu Ximing's expressions were ugly. They said they wanted to withdraw their investment. But they used the money to force it back. More importantly, when did this useless person get so much money? Fu Zhongyi was the most frustrated. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have been so adamant. He wouldn't have gone against his eldest son all the time. Now that things had escalated to such a state, how was he going to resolve this? When Fu Ximing saw Fu Zhongyi's expression, he knew his father was going to change his mind. He clenched his fists, wanting to say something. Just then the meeting was interrupted. Sorry for the interruption. Everyone turned towards the source of the voice. The man was dressed in a suit, holding a document in his hands as he walked towards her. "Young Master Jiao, I'm from the Qin Group. This is the investment from Bosch Qin. It's 520991314, it's not a lot." Bosch Qin said that it represents his sincerity. 500 million? Not a lot? That was the first reaction of the shareholders. Only Bo Jio paused when she heard the string of numbers. She remembered the password the Almighty had told her and coughed lightly. "Tell Brother Mo that I've received his sincerity, but he doesn't need the investment." "All right then." The man smiled. Bosch Qin predicted that young Master Jio wouldn't accept it, but he instructed me to pass on the message. There are 20 minutes left before the 2-hour deadline. Bosch Qin's car is downstairs. Hearing this, the shareholders were so shocked that they didn't know what to say. They had indeed heard of it. Young Master Qin and their young Master Fu had a good relationship. But no one could be sure if the word good was an exaggeration. After all, they were from the same team and it was normal for them to work together. Everyone in the business world knew that young Master Qin valued esports the most. Back then, Ximing had mentioned that he had a good relationship with young Master Qin. But one day, when Ximing had gone over to greet him, young Master Qin hadn't even spared him a glance. Hence, the shareholders had always maintained a neutral attitude towards such matters. In other words, they weren't completely convinced. But on this day, young Master Fu had come for the meeting and young Master Qin had immediately prepared 500 million. He had even waited downstairs personally. How good of a brother could he be to such an extent? Or was it as the internet had said? Young Master Qin and young Master Fu were together? If that was the case, how many times would Fu Corporation's market rise in the future? Everyone wanted to use their calculator to do the math. They didn't even need to think about withdrawing their investment. The best thing to do now was to stay. However, it was not up to these people to decide whether to leave or not. Bo Jio straightened, stuffing a hand into her pocket as she walked towards Fu Zhongyi, who had stiffened. "Actually, it doesn't matter if you withdraw your investment or not. Boss Fu probably hasn't finished looking through the company's structure. Lawyer Bai, please continue." Sure. Lawyer Bai pointed. She reached the last page. It was written clearly that from this day onwards, Fu Corporation would be dissolved and restructured. The name of the corporation would be changed to He Corporation. This meant that from today onwards, everything here belonged to He Xianghua. When he saw the two words He Corporation, Fu Zhongyi felt his vision blur. He had never imagined that his child would use such a method to deal with him. His chest heaved up and down as he pointed at the youth. You did this to me. Aren't you afraid of divine punishment? Divine punishment? Bojiu laughed lightly. Back then you abandoned your wife and son to settle down outside. You even chased away all the people who had helped you in the past. Back then you didn't even think about who was the one who had accompanied you day and night to start your business. Who was the one who had taken out all your savings to help you set up the company when you were in dire straits? It was my mother, He Xianghua. But President Fu, for the sake of the mistress and himself, he forced my mother to have no say in this company at all. Outside, he only laughed at my mother for being a village girl from the countryside and how uncultured she was. My mother's personality is fierce, but no matter how fierce she is, she still knows her limits. You and the mistress clearly know my mother's level of education, yet you deliberately made my mother embarrass herself in public. After that, you spread it as a laughing stock and deprived her of the dividends that should have belonged to her year after year. In the end, when she came out to set up her own subsidiary company, you still suppressed her. Boss Fu, even such a scumbag didn't suffer divine punishment. Even if I suffer divine punishment in the future, it will be after you. You. Fu Zhongyi's fingers trembled in anger. Fujio smiled. Please leave with your obedient son, we still have to continue with our shareholders' meeting. This company doesn't belong to the Fu family anymore, it belongs to the He family. Fu Zhongyi would never have expected to lose his authority in the company. But Lawyer Bai's words were never just for show. Was he really going to be chased out of the company just like that? For some reason he watched the youngster's handsome and smiling face. Fu Zhongyi suddenly recalled a year ago. It had been around this time. He had sent out orders for He Xianghua to leave the company. She had only attended the meetings occasionally as a shareholder. At that time his eldest son had been there as well. He had been standing outside and shouting at He Xianghua. Why don't you talk to Dad properly? Why don't you dress up prettier? You only know how to dance in the square. If you could be like others, this wouldn't have happened. Did you do something embarrassing again to be chased out? You asked me not to ask, so don't bother about me. The louder the commotion, the better it was for him. Because of this incident, the relationship between the mother and son had deteriorated. He didn't mind since he didn't want a useless person to inherit the company. But at that time he had spoken up to make him happy so he wouldn't have missed out on his allowance. If it hadn't been for his son's excessive spending, he wouldn't have gone to such extremes. But now, the youngster in front of him wasn't the same as before. You aren't my son. Tell me, where did you hide my son? Fu Zhongyi reached out and grabbed the youngster's collar. His meticulously groomed hair was disheveled because of this action. His face trembled, his expression a little deranged. He is clearly a useless person. Who exactly are you? Bo Jio didn't move, allowing him to roar. One of her hands was still in her pocket, her cold and handsome face sweeping them a glance. She looked like a noble vampire looking down from above. I am someone who crawled out from hell. My job is to destroy ungrateful scum like you. Fu Zhongyi's entire body trembled. At that moment, it was as though he had seen a devil. His eyes shook violently as though he had been shaken by something. His grip on his collar loosened gradually. Fu Ximing was smart. He knew that if he stayed any longer he would only end up worse. He reached out and grabbed Fu Zhongyi, leading him out. At the same time he understood that this was no longer their place. This scene was so similar. But back then he was still young. Standing in that meeting room, the ones being chased away were the uncouth parents. Especially at that time, He Xianghua was the target of everyone's criticism. Who would have thought that the useless son she gave birth to would end up like this? At first, he had thought that with those photos Fujio would be useless. But now, they were the ones who were useless. Regardless of how valuable his shares were, once the main company was disbanded and the name changed, it would be converted into cash. He wouldn't be allowed to continue being a shareholder. For people who do business, it was as though he had nothing left. Besides, Fu Zhongyi's business couldn't be entirely using his own money. There was still the loan from the bank. With that in mind, Fu Ximing didn't even want to help him up. Why was his father, who used to be so pleasing to the eye, a burden now? Fu Zhongyi was infuriated. He wanted to turn and analyze the situation with his beloved son, But he realized that Fu Ximing's gaze had changed. He had seen that gaze many times. Because he had looked at xuanhuan and Bo Jio with the same gaze. Disdain, as though he was looking at a piece of dog skin plaster that would stick to him. In that instant, Fu Zhongyi's heart turned cold. He didn't know why, but he suddenly thought of the word, retribution, on the other side. In the meeting room. Chapter 1040. Madam Qin? Lawyer Bai stood beside Bo Jio. He could hear the voice. Even though it was soft, the 3 words made him arch a brow. He hadn't expected their relationship to reach such a stage. It seemed like the media wasn't up to speed. But the Qin family had actually agreed. Lawyer Bai hadn't expected this. After all, the Qin family only had one heir. Bo Jio kept her phone when she noticed Lawyer Bai's actions. She glanced at the shareholders who were watching her and smiled flirtatiously. Lawyer Bai will take over from now on. As for Boss Zhang, you can go wherever you want. The person who had been trembling from head to toe was stunned. The shareholders watched as the silver-haired youngster tugged at her collar as she walked out of the meeting room. Her arrogance seemed to have sealed He Honghua's position from now on. Just as Bo Jio had said, from now on, this place belonged to He Honghua. The employees who had been working there for many years were the happiest ones. At this moment, the technical executives who had wanted to jump ship to another company threw their resignation letters into the bin. There were also those business managers who were running business outside, drinking so much that they were puking on the toilet. After receiving the news, they were immediately stunned. Countless times he had asked himself if it was worth it. He was the one who dealt with the company's clients, but he couldn't compare to the connections that came from relatives. He had asked Fu Zhongyi about it, but every time, Boss Fu had replied that the company wouldn't mistreat him. He had to work hard and be content. One day he would be successful. Content. He had worked so hard, but he still couldn't compare to someone with connections. He had been loyal to the company for 5 years, and even till now, he had been renting a house. Every time he drank so much that he would have a headache even when he slept. He had been wondering if he should return to his hometown. But back then, when he had left school, he had told himself in high spirits that he wanted to settle down in this city so that he wouldn't let his parents down. But 1 year passed after another. Those dreams seemed to have been extinguished. Gradually, some people would tell you that no matter how hard you worked, you couldn't compare to someone with connections. But from now on, it was different. He wasn't sure why. When he heard this news, he finally believed the saying that there were always things in this world that could be obtained through hard work. The entire group changed from Fu's enterprise to He's. On the surface, it seemed that only the ownership of the company had changed. But in reality, those who were knowledgeable would understand that all large enterprises and groups had always been based on people. That was what Bo Jio did. Only when you know how to respect your employees will your employees work hard for the company. People should always be equal. He Honghua was still in a daze. Even though the meeting was over, she still had a lot of questions for her Jio. Lawyer Bai tidied up his documents and walked towards her. He Honghua called out to him, "Lawyer Bai Jio, Mr. He." Lawyer Bai was smart, summarizing everything with one sentence. Normal businessmen wouldn't think of this point, but boss only did it. It's probably because he learned from you. Not only must one be strong, but one must also know how to be grateful. That's why there's an employee share system. He Honghua was taken aback. Lawyer Bai didn't say much, leaving politely. But his words were clearly heard by all the employees. No one knew. It had been from that day onwards. A small group had soared because of their management philosophy. In a short span of 5 years, they had become the leading enterprise in Jianghu City. At that time, people only knew that the executive director of He Group was a female entrepreneur who came from a village. Her career and family had been taken away, but she had learned some principles through the pain. These principles weren't just about building without destruction. Live for yourself and be grateful to those who had helped you. Of course, this was all in the future. Now, the most important thing was that young Master Qin was waiting at the reception area. Basically, all the female employees couldn't control themselves. They couldn't help but look over. Until a silver-haired young man walked out of the elevator and walked straight to young Master Qin's side. Then he reached out and tugged at his collar as if to breathe. Then he naturally bent down and kissed young Master Qin. It wasn't a kiss, it was a real kiss. Have you been waiting for a long time? Bo Jio watched as the Almighty waited for her. When she thought about how she would be able to kidnap him in 3 to 4 days, she couldn't control herself. When she kissed him, she noticed a sharp intake of breath. But since she had already kissed him, she couldn't pretend that nothing had happened. Hence, she sat down beside the Almighty, her lips lifting into an indescribable devilish smile. The beauty at the front desk had the clearest view. At this moment she couldn't help swallowing her saliva. That was their young master Fu. He actually dared to kiss young master Qin in front of everyone. More importantly, young master Qin wasn't angry. He didn't throw young master Fu through the glass door. Instead, the coldness in his body disappeared. He placed the business magazine aside and reached out to pinch young master Fu's face. What was going on? The strangest thing was the way young master Fu had kissed young master Qin and the way he had said it. It was as though a CEO was treating his newlywed sweetheart. Their positions were all messed up? Was it because of their young master Fu? Before anyone could regain their senses, Qin Imo had already pulled Bo Jio's hand up. Qin Imo held onto her hand and stood up. His other hand was wrapped in a white bandage, making him look noble and aloof, unlike before. He didn't seem to care about the commotion he had caused. He walked past the Fu Corporation's employees and reached the entrance. There was already a chauffeur inside. The car didn't look very eye-catching from the outside. Compared to the cars in the Qin family's garage, this was probably the most low-profile. Bo Jio noticed it but didn't think much about it. Only when they boarded the car did the Almighty say, "To a university." Bo Jio arched a brow. A university? To meet the headmaster. Qin Imo supported his chin, his voice indescribably lazy. "You will fail if you don't attend classes for a long period of time." That was when Bo Jio remembered that the Almighty hadn't graduated, but the Almighty never attended classes. Besides, a university wouldn't bother him in this aspect. Hence, there was only one possibility. He was meeting the headmaster but it had nothing to do with attending classes. He probably wanted to investigate something. Chapter 1041. A university was the capital university of Jianghu City. It wasn't just the number of students. At this stage of the year, there were many tourists from all over the world. It had almost become a landmark in River Town. However, in such a school, no student would dye their hair completely silver. Basically, the moment Bo Jio entered the school, she became the center of attention. Coupled with that handsome face and Qin Imo who was standing beside her, it was hard to believe. It seemed to ignite the hearts of many young girls. She could even hear the whispers of the girls beside her. The news spread like wildfire. Very quickly, Bo Jio felt as though she and the Almighty were being watched like monkeys. As expected, there was a 70% chance that they wouldn't find anything when they entered a university without disguise. Fortunately, their luck was good. Just as Bo Jio was feeling thirsty, she found a vending machine and bent over to buy a bottle of water. Someone was talking to another person. What do you think they are investigating all day? It's so annoying. Who knows? Anyway, the people in the group said that even if they find something amiss, they won't do anything. It's really interesting. If someone dies somewhere else, they will say it was done by a university. What a joke. Isn't that right? Is there a need for such a small case? There are so many cases in the world. Why don't they care about it? Why are they so persistent? Alright. Since you are the admin, you can just tell everyone and get them to do as you say. 2 days ago, someone mentioned that there was something wrong with my group and asked me to kick it out. Good job. It's troublesome to watch if you don't kick it. I saw what the person said. He is quite good at finding evidence. He said that you aren't a fan of Spade Z and that you shouldn't use Spade Z's name to attract fans. What's wrong with my group? Just a name. We didn't say anything about Spade Z. We just wanted to talk about the game. How is that attracting fans? Bo Jio straightened. She was still holding on to the can of cold drink. When she glanced up, she met their gaze. It was obvious that they had seen what Spade Z looked like. After the National League, Bo Jio's appearance was no longer a secret. Besides, it was hard not to notice that head of silver hair. The two people who were still discussing immediately quieted down. Bo Jio walked towards them and stopped. She said nonchalantly, "Then you should change the group name and information. Let's see how many people will join your group." That person's face alternated between red and white. In the end, he scoffed and said, "Esports players nowadays really make people uncomfortable. They're simply sick." Who said anything? They just want me to change the information. Bo Jio chuckled, tossing the can in her hand upwards. That person continued, "This kind of thing is something that one is willing to suffer and the other is willing to suffer. Who asked those fans who like you to join the group? I gave them a home to communicate with." Bo Jio lowered her gaze and remained silent. Just as that person was about to say something, there was a loud clang. An oncoming can slid past her cheek and smashed into the wall behind her. That kind of strength caused an echo. The girl froze, her face flushed red. The pain caused her expression to change instantly. She pointed at Bo Jio furiously. You. What did I do? Why are you pointing at me?" The youngster asked calmly. But his words, The girl clenched her fists wanting to say something. Bo Jio tilted her head to send a WeChat message. Brother Imo, there's something strange here. Do you want to come over and take a look? Ha. The girl laughed. You're looking for Almighty Qin for such a small matter? You're really Almighty Qin. Bo Jio played with her phone. She glanced at the girl and smiled. I'm sure you aren't her. But even if you aren't, you should be the one being led. You're still useful. Once we follow the clues, we will be able to find out who the person with mediocre skills is. She's sick. The girl didn't understand what Bo Jio was talking about. She just felt that there was something wrong with her. When Qin Imo walked over with the headmaster and the plainclothes officer, the girl's expression changed. She didn't think she had done anything wrong. Using money to oppress others, how disgusting. Using money to pressure others, how disgusting. In her eyes, the two of them were like that. Qin Imo tilted his head slightly before he retracted his gaze and looked at her. What's so strange? Bo Jio opened her mouth, her words causing the headmaster's expression to change. The maiden's sacrifice will be restarted in a university. Little friend, you can't talk nonsense. No school director would want to hear this kind of news. Qin Mo's expression didn't change at all. Director, let her finish. Using the internet to attract some people to a private platform. There are many types of private platforms. They might seem ordinary, but in reality they are breeding grounds. Through communication, hints are usually planted in people's hearts unknowingly. People who follow the crowd are easily influenced. Besides, in China, there aren't many people who have faith and don't believe in karma. They have a weak sense of right and wrong. Regardless of whether it's their actions or words, they are based on their own perspective. They can't see the pain of others and build their happiness recklessly. Once someone guides them, they will become keyboard warriors who can force others to their death because they don't have to take responsibility for their sarcastic remarks. Bo Jio paused slightly before continuing. Director, logically speaking, a university student should have the most basic morals. Even if they notice something amiss, they shouldn't react. There are so many cases in the world, why don't they care about them? Why do they insist on targeting us? I didn't expect these words to come out of the mouths of the students of a university. Investigating the case was for protection, but in their eyes, it had been twisted into something else. They were using the group chat to influence others. How many students like her were there in a university? I should investigate further. This was one of the reasons. Secondly, perhaps the student could explain if there were any acquaintances beside her. The headmaster understood, but he didn't want to understand. As a senior, he smiled. Isn't that a little too scary? Bo Jio laughed lightly. Director, you can wait and see if you don't believe me. Before the headmaster could reply, the headmaster spoke. Chapter 1042. The girl couldn't see herself, just like how a selfish person wouldn't feel that they were selfish. The most disappointed person was probably the crime squad member who had been standing at the side. Most of the time. Perhaps that was the case. Even if they tried their best, it would still be misinterpreted. That was the greatest helplessness. Bo Jio didn't speak, her eyes darkening. The girl smirked and was about to say something when a cold voice came from beside her. Can I trouble Director Liu to inform the students' parents? The investigation will take some time. Also, we need to make a trip to the female dormitory. All right. The moment Qin Imo spoke, Director Liu realized the severity of the situation. After all, Qin Imo had been a specially enrolled student in a university. Back then, Qin Imo had been a specially enrolled student because he had achieved a certain level of attainment in criminal psychology. At that time, almost all the reputable universities had been fighting for him. There had even been professors from overseas who had personally contacted Qin Imo, inviting him to their school. But he had come from the Red Army courtyard, and the Qin family had always requested for him to stay in China after he came of age. Qin Imo had been determined to stay in China and protect his country. Hence, many professors from reputable universities had expressed their regrets. That was how a university had managed to recruit him, which meant that Qin Imo had sensed something was amiss. There was definitely a problem. But the girl didn't know that. Her face flushed red, looking extremely aggrieved. Why did you have to inform my parents? You think you can disregard other people's morals just because your family is rich? Qin Imo finally lifted his lids, his voice calm. Do you even have a personality? The girl froze. Qin Imo wasn't done. Getting into a university doesn't mean you're a good person. Cooperating with the investigation is the duty of every citizen. If you didn't learn it in primary school, you can read more junior high textbooks. Someone like you probably won't cooperate with the investigation. I'm informing your parents so that they can bail you out. If you don't need it, I won't force you. A reverse personality is indeed suitable to stay in the police station. The girl's eyes were filled with hatred, as though she wanted to drink someone's blood. Perhaps that was the case. It wasn't scary to make a mistake. It was the unwillingness to repent after making a mistake. That was why it was terrifying. The dean listened to the entire process from the side and couldn't help but be a little stunned. He really didn't think that there would be such a student in a university. It made him feel a chill on the back of his neck. It would be dark in a few hours. After the girl was taken away, the director couldn't understand why Xianxia wanted to visit the dormitory. These days, the school's teachers had been checking the dormitory building regularly, and nothing abnormal had happened. Even the internet had been restricted. Why did he think of the dormitory building? The members of the Major Crimes Division were confused as well. Out of everyone, only Bojo knew what he was thinking. Judging from the girl's attitude, she still didn't know what she did wrong, so how could she cooperate with the investigation? The fastest way was no longer to interrogate, but to lock onto possible targets. Now that a university was so strict, it was inconvenient for the person who impersonated her to move around, so she simply found someone else to do what she wanted to do. Judging from the girl's behavior, she wasn't someone who stayed by her side for a long time, so she wouldn't be affected to this extent. Therefore, the fastest way was to start from the dormitory, which meant that the fake Z was most likely the girl's roommate. The female dormitory was much cleaner than the male dormitory. Especially in a capital city like a university, the facilities and conditions were superior. The corridors were clean and there weren't many people walking around. This was probably the difference between high school and university. But even so, when the two of them walked in, many girls shrieked in excitement. They couldn't help but scream. First, Qianmo's face was always handsome and fairy-like no matter the time. Even when he walked, there seemed to be an aura around him, making it hard not to notice him. Also, Bojo rarely wore suits. Now he stuffed a hand into his pocket, his body tall and slender. His collar was half pulled, his silver hair falling down, and the slight smile on his face made him look like a prince. A girl with a face mask was about to knock on the door next door, but when she saw Qianmo, she shrank back with a yelp. Then she jumped back, covering her face with both hands, feeling shy and surprised. Moreover, Big Spade was standing beside Almighty Qin. Gosh, how lucky was she to be able to see her two almighties today. No, that wasn't right. How stupid was she to have to wear a face mask like a man? At this moment, Bojo only had one thought. Indeed, she should have worn a face mask. Especially the Almighty, he was too lethal. If this continued, it would be easy to alert the enemy. There were people taking photos with their phones. The headmaster and the crime squad wanted to stop them. But it was inevitable that the photos would be leaked. In less than a minute, the topic became a hot topic. Esports Prince Charming accidentally enters female dormitory. Such a topic was bound to go viral. When someone clicked on it and saw the photos, the Weibo account was flooded with comments. Dearest, is there a clearer photo? Is there a photo of Almighty Qin's face? Big Spade and Almighty Qin entered the female dormitory together? Is it fake? After the appraisal, it might be real. That handsome silver short hair and the way he walks, it does resemble my Big Spade. I've never felt so blessed living in a university. The coordinates are the female dormitory, it means I'm looking at the two almighties. The popularity didn't seem to be decreasing. It was just like the screams coming from the dormitory corridor. Even the headmaster's authority couldn't suppress the commotion from the surrounding students. There was only one thought in his mind. It was difficult to move an inch with the two of them together. Outside the dormitory, many people started to run into the building, worried that they wouldn't be able to watch. Only one person, who was about to return to the dormitory with a book in his hand, paused at this moment. Seeing this scene, he pulled the person beside him and said, "Student, may I ask what's going on? Why are they all running towards the dormitory building? Don't you know? Supreme Alliance's two almighties are here, they're in our dormitory." The girl's face was flushed when she spoke, clearly agitated. The person who heard her froze, the fingertips of her other hand digging deep into her book. She was confused. Supreme Alliance's two almighties? Young Master Qin and Spade Z. The girl glanced towards the dormitory, her face filled with excitement. "I'm going in first." "All right." The person released her hand, turning over, her gaze flickering. Who else could it be other than Fanjia? The girl was puzzled. "Aren't you going back as well?" "I suddenly remembered that I forgot my dormitory key." Fanjia forced a smile, still a little stiff. "I have to go back to the classroom to get it?" "You can go back to get it after you've seen it, it's a rare opportunity." The girl was a warm-hearted person wanting to pull her in. There was a loud slap. Fanjia flung her hand away forcefully. The sound made the girl feel embarrassed. "Ah, sorry, me too. I'm not going, you can go." Fanjia cut her off, not even bothering to give her a perfunctory smile, turning to leave. The girl didn't mind, all she wanted to do now was to see her almighty. Fanjia, who had changed directions, felt a pressure she had never felt before. She hadn't expected that person to come so quickly. Moreover, he had traced her to the female dormitory. She didn't have anything on her, more importantly, her identification was still in the dormitory. Fanjia wasn't sure how far the other party had gone. Did he already know who she was and was here to arrest her? In that instant, the darkness emanating from Fanjia was extremely obvious. She walked forward, her expression already gloomy to a certain extent. The sudden turn of events had messed up her entire plan, leaving only annoyance. But this was the biggest difference between her and Bojio. It was the reality. Even at this stage, she would still be able to determine the crux of the problem and find the key to solving it. For example, if he really knew who she was, he wouldn't have entered the female dormitory, he would have ordered for her arrest. Fanjia had always been confident that she understood Chinamo the best. But in reality, someone who didn't even have the courage to fight Chinamo wouldn't understand him the best. She had never been the one to fight Chinamo fair and square. It was Z, the silver-haired youngster who dared to stand beside Chinamo, her eyes filled with a devilish laziness. "Brother Imo, as an almighty, you shouldn't go through a girl's things. Leave such immoral things to me." The headmaster was a little confused when he heard this. "Aren't you a Prince Charming too?" Chinamo didn't bother about her, walking towards one of the beds. At this moment, the headmaster received the information on the 4 students in the dormitory and was about to place it in Chinmo's hands. Chinamo flipped open a book on the wooden table, his voice calm as he interrupted him. "How many students with the surname Fan?" The headmaster stilled, asking instinctively, "How did you know there's a student with the surname Fan?" Chinamo flipped his hand, showing him the signature on the book. The headmaster wanted to say something. The youngster caressed his chin. "I think she's called Fanjia." The headmaster. He hadn't said anything. Were they here to get their fortune told? "There's a signed receipt in the bin." Bojio stood up, showing the receipt in her hands. But there was something she didn't understand. "Brother Imo, why didn't you ask anyone else? Why did you ask Fanjia first?" Chinmo's fingers moved, pointing towards the books on the shelf. The books one likes to read can often reflect a person's personality and heart. Her table is overly clean and she is dressed like a young lady. But the books here have dark backgrounds, it doesn't match a young lady's feelings. Conflict means there's a problem. "I see." Bojio smiled lazily. She had learned another trick from the Almighty. But the next second, Chinamo spoke again. Chinamo added, "The others are basically normal, unlike a certain someone who reads the super pampered little wife Where Are You Going series." The youngster who was still flipping through the books almost slipped. How could he not mention her dark history? He continued nonchalantly, "You don't seem to read those books anymore. How did you change your reading habits so easily?" Bojio arched a brow, her instincts telling her that it was a trap. She replied casually, "I've grown up, my mindset has definitely changed." "Is that so?" The word that represented uncertainty appeared again. This meant that the Almighty didn't believe her. Bojio was thinking about how she should reply if the Almighty continued to test her. After all, she couldn't afford to be exposed before she left the country. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to kidnap her. Fortunately, the Almighty only glanced at her once before returning his attention. He turned to the counselor beside him, his voice calm. "What's the personality of the student named Fanjia like? Did anything special happen?" "Nothing special happened and she has a cute personality. She gets along well with her roommates." This was the counselor's reply. It wasn't hard to hear the compliments in his tone. Fanjia had left a good impression. Chinamo flipped through the book in his hands. "Who is Fanjia's best friend?" "Best friend?" The counselor took a moment to recall, a confused expression on his face. "I don't think so, she doesn't like to participate in group activities." Bojio arched a brow. She got along well with her roommates but didn't have any close friends and didn't participate in group activities. That itself was strange. Chinamo noticed it as well, asking, "When did she start school?" "She started school early, but because she wasn't feeling well, she only started classes half a year after school started. She seems like a rich girl." The counselor was still confused. "She used to stay outside but would come back occasionally. What's wrong with an easygoing student?" Bo Jio glanced down, grasping the crux of the problem. She used to stay outside? When was that? About a month ago. I can't remember the exact time, but she has been staying in school ever since. I heard that her rent was due and it was more convenient for her to stay in school, so she came back. The counselor felt that it was a common occurrence. He couldn't understand why the investigation would lead to this dormitory. But it was too much of a coincidence for Bo Jio. About a month ago, she had locked onto the fake Z's neighborhood. Unconsciously, Bo Jio glanced in Qin Mo's direction. Coincidentally, Qin Mo was also looking at her. It was as though they were telepathic. She was almost certain. Chapter 1043. Usually, once they locked onto their target, they would take action immediately. But Qin Mo and Bo Jio didn't move immediately. From the looks of it, the commotion in the dormitory building was huge. It wasn't possible for them to not notice. The commotion wasn't within their expectations. But since the situation was already like this, they could only use other methods to change the situation. They didn't say a word. Bo Jio grabbed onto the railing with one hand, taking a step forward. She exerted strength, bending her knees onto the top bunk. That instant, her movement was suave, the hem of her suit fluttering in midair. It was a cool sight. The headmaster was speechless. After all, everyone had stayed in a double bunk bed in school. Why did he have to struggle so much to climb it back then? Bo Jio checked the bed while Qin Mo checked the study table. It was as though they had discussed it beforehand. There wasn't any room for the crime squad member. Until Bo Jio found a card bag, her lips lifting. Her identification card is here. Qin Mo took it, glancing at the photo on the identification card before meeting the counselor's gaze. Are you sure this is Fanjia? Some people used fake identification cards. The counselor nodded. It's her, there's no mistake. The real photo? Bo Jio lifted the corners of her lips, breaking into a devilish smile. She probably used up all the fake identification cards and is only left with the real one. Bo Jio was right, Fanjia had used up all the fake identification cards and had been forced to use the real one. This was supposed to be the real one when she returned to the Golden Triangle, since there would be strict checks when entering and exiting the country. But Fanjia had never expected that the youngster she had been pretending to be and hated would be the Real Z. She had wanted to find a breakthrough point from this person to create a bigger whirlpool. However, he didn't expect that his identity would be exposed in this way. There was one more thing that she hadn't expected. Qin Mo and Z would work together. Fanjia wasn't the only one who hadn't expected this. If Director Huang had heard it, he would have been shocked. After all, Qin Mo wasn't the only one. No one knew that the youngster standing in front of him with the reckless smile was the idol of all the hackers in the world. Z. In the Fifth Avenue of America, no one could do anything to Z. At this moment, the young man's thin lips were slightly pursed as he continued to search for something. As long as Qin Mo lifted his eyes, he could see the youngster's expression. The light in his eyes dimmed. Then he reached out and carried her by the waist. Bo Jio stilled. She felt as though the Almighty was hugging a naughty child. The school dean watched from the side and widened his eyes. What are these two people doing? The member of the Key Case Investigation Unit knew the importance of an ID card. He picked up the walkie-talkie and was about to report the progress. Unexpectedly, the next second, Qin Mo stopped him. I will contact Director Huang directly, wait for his instructions. Of course, the member would listen to Qin Mo, but they had to report to their superior. Young Master Qin this. Qin Mo didn't say much. He whipped out his phone and called Director Huang. Minion was irritated. How many hours has it been? Why did you call only now? The higher-ups have ordered the Major Crimes Division to solve the case in the next few days, or they'll hold me accountable. Qin Mo placed the phone further away from his ear, tilting his head casually. He waited for Minion to finish yelling before pulling the phone closer. His voice was calm, carrying his usual elegance. The fake Z has been found. The 5 words were like a stimulant, perking Minion up instantly. He straightened his back. Oh, where is he? I'll head over now. It's fine. Qin Mo twirled the ID card in his hands, asking slowly, who is with you now? Minion started to panic. I'm at work, who else could it be? Hurry up and tell me, don't delay the arrest. No way. His deep and magnetic voice caused Minion to pause. No way? What? Minion frowned deeply. It was such an important matter, wouldn't it be a waste of time if he didn't act quickly? Qin Mo glanced at the youngster. The intelligent Bo Jio pushed the 3 of them out of the room and locked the wooden door. Her movements were smooth, but the headmaster and the dormitory management who were standing outside the dormitory were confused. What was going on? Qin Imo watched as the youngster leaned against the door, smiling at him. He reached out casually, pointing at her, hinting that she should head out too. Bo Jio stood firm, her expression serious. "I'll guard the door." Qin Imo arched a brow, seeming to have thought of something. He lifted the edge of his lips, turning to continue talking on his phone. "Have you forgotten that the other party has spies inside?" Director Huang, also known as Director Huang, came to a realization. "You're worried that the news will be leaked and the other party will escape in advance. But how are we going to act if we don't inform our subordinates? If there are spies inside, everything will be meaningless. You should understand this logic." Qin Mo's voice didn't change even though he had noticed that the youngster had been looking in his direction while he was on the phone. That clear gaze was sometimes so calm that it was hard to doubt him. If it hadn't been for Xiao Zhao's reminder, he wouldn't have thought about it until now. Qin Imo averted his gaze, listening to the voice on the other end. Director Huang paced back and forth. "What should we do? Don't we act?" "No." Qin Mo's eyes lit up. "Rather than being passive, why don't we set a trap for them to fall into?" With that, he twirled the ID card in his hands. Bo Jio's gaze landed on the ID card. In that instant, she understood Qin Mo's plan. Sun Tzu's art of war, catching a turtle in a jar. If they were lucky, they would be able to catch two of them. As expected, Qin Imo continued, "The subordinates can't tell, but you can tell the higher-ups. Based on what I know, any major case would require a meeting between the four leaders to come up with a common answer. You can hold a secret meeting now and invite the four of them over. Tell them that the suspect, Fan Jia, the culprit behind the maiden's sacrifice, has an important item in the hands of the crime squad. With it, it would be difficult for Fan Jia to leave the country. Through this item, we will be able to confirm her identity through the surveillance footage. However, with the enemy spies, it isn't a good idea to alert them. We are worried that someone might leak the information or take the item, hence, we are using the highest level of secrecy. Ask the four of them to keep it a secret. Tell them the address." Director Huang's fingers froze in disbelief. "Are you trying to use this method to test the four of them? You suspect that the spy is among them? Is that possible?" "Whether it's possible or not, we'll know after we try." Qin Mo's voice didn't change at all, his indifferent tone as though he was discussing the weather today. "If the higher-ups don't make any mistakes, it will be easier for the people below to work." Qin Mo's casual words made Director Huang feel conflicted. He would only occasionally think that there was a problem with the higher-ups. But this idea was too sensational, so he didn't think too deeply about it. But Qin Mo's words were reminding him that he had to investigate the source of this matter. "Got it. I'll inform those four to come to the key case investigation unit now." After hanging up the phone, Director Huang did not waste any time and immediately called the four of them. The higher-ups had been paying close attention to the maiden's sacrifice case. The four of them, including Huang Guohua, were mainly keeping an eye on this side. Therefore, as soon as he heard that the main culprit was confirmed, even those who were usually very busy stopped what they were doing and rushed to the conference hall. At that time, Director Huang was sitting on a leather office chair, holding the phone with a serious expression on his face. The four of them arrived at the conference hall one after another. Someone couldn't help but ask, "Didn't you say that you have a suspect? Why haven't you informed us?" Director Huang glanced at him before replying, basically following Qin Mo's instructions. "If that's the case, we have to keep it a secret." Another person moved forward. "If we don't inform our subordinates, we won't alert them. Before we know what the problem is, it's best to keep a low profile." "No, I don't think so." The old officer had a different opinion. "Since we have a target, we should act quickly. It's good to keep a low profile, but we might miss the best time to arrest them." "Hee, I'm just voicing my opinion. Secretary Zhang, you can reconsider if you don't agree. But this matter is still under the jurisdiction of the crime squad, so Director Huang should be the one to make the decision. After all, everyone has their own specialties." Compared to the old officer, Secretary Zhang, Director Wang, who was originally from the Criminal Investigation Unit, was basically on Director Huang's side. Little Huang wasn't asking for their approval, it was just a notification. After the notification, Director Huang kept the things in his hands. "It's decided. I will get someone to protect the items the suspect left behind. At the very least, we have to control her movements so she can't leave the country. Due to the severity of the matter, I will have to ask the four of you to keep this a secret. This time, we have specially selected a special unit from the military. No one will know what they are up to and there won't be any leaks. We already have the suspect's portrait, and as long as we have the identification, we will be able to arrest Fan Jia soon. As for her identification, it will be sent to the forensics department for analysis. It will be safe. These words signified the end of the meeting. Director Huang sent everyone out personally. When he was the only one left in the conference room, he took out his phone and dialed a familiar number. We have followed your instructions. What about now? What are we doing? Qin replied calmly, waiting? Just waiting? Director Huang couldn't figure out his intentions. Where are you now? Downstairs. By downstairs, Qin was referring to the crime squad. He glanced over at the silver-haired youngster who was biting on a lollipop. His hands moved so quickly that it left one speechless. He lifted his thin lips, looking like a naughty prince. I'm also admiring someone's skills. Someone? Director Huang paused before realizing who he was referring to. How can you be so lovey-dovey at a time like this? Qin, everyone knows you are smart, but the four of them are all smart. Even if there is a spy among them, even if you tell them the location of the identification, they might not send anyone to retrieve it. They are more skilled than anyone else in terms of self-protection. Once the bait is set, no fish will take the bait. They might make use of the time difference to help the main culprit escape. By then we will be left with nothing. That won't happen. Qin replied to Director Huang's uneasiness. He met the youngster's gaze and arched a brow. Are you done? Boujio bit on the lollipop, stuffing one hand into her pocket. She gave Qin a cool, okay sign, a devilish smile on her face. What's the big deal about giving someone else a listening device? Moreover, the four of them seemed to be in a hurry. It was a little difficult to get around the bodyguards in black, especially when they bumped into someone. The bodyguards had to snipe them with their sniper eyes. Fortunately, she had changed her clothes and was now wearing the uniform of the Key Case Investigation Unit, so no one would suspect what she had done. Qin lifted his thin lips, taking out the Bluetooth earpiece. He grabbed the youngster's wrist and pulled her into the Land Rover parked by the roadside. He didn't bother looking at the gazes around him. He let Director Huang ask on the other side of the phone, why not? Qin replied, wait a minute. Director Huang didn't know what to say. Who was the real chief here? It was every successful person's basic charity to always carry a business notebook with them. After Qin boarded the car, he placed the notebook in the youngster's hands, his voice unchanged. You should know how to locate it. Of course. Boujio's eyes lit up when she saw the notebook. The Almighty's gaze had been deep for the past 2 days. He seemed to know something, but at the same time he didn't. In order to avoid giving herself away, she hadn't touched any electronic products for the past 2 days. It was a little frustrating. Chapter 1044. Kata kata. The rhythmic tapping of the keyboard reverberated in the car. Only a pair of hands could be seen descending rapidly. The phone was connected to the hotspot, and through the Bluetooth earpiece, he entered the program page. When the chat box popped up, the strings of code seemed to transform into countless lines, the lights connecting and invading. Director Huang finally realized something was amiss, his frown deepening as he asked Qin through the phone, "What's that sound on your end?" "Laptop." Qin voice was calm, his bandaged hand slung casually to the side. The 3 words confused Director Huang even more. "Laptop?" Director Huang's eyes lit up. "You brought Fatty?" Qin paused, taking a moment before replying, "MH." Director Huang couldn't understand the situation over the phone. Qin raised his hand, tapping on the screen that the youngster was working on. His voice didn't change. "Sync the recording to Director Huang's phone." "All right." Boujio smiled devilishly. Director Huang was still confused. "What recording?" "It's coming," she replied, her fingers pressing the spacebar. Once the target was locked, the map opened up. There were 4 red dots scattered in different directions. It had been less than a minute since the 4 of them had left. "That's not right, what's coming?" "Qin, who exactly is sitting beside you?" Director Huang's frustration was beyond description. Qin didn't reply, instead he zoomed in on the map calmly and switched on his Bluetooth earpiece. "Are they there?" "Boss, car number 1 is ready." It was Magician's voice. He always wore sunglasses and drove a black sports car. Being flashy was a form of disguise. "Car number 2 is ready." It was the Special Forces soldier's voice. After confirming the location, Boujio glanced over, arching a brow. When did the Almighty set this up? Since there was car number 1 and 2, there would definitely be cars 3 and 4, which meant that all 4 of them had been following the same car. 1 minute and 20 seconds. That meant that the 4 cars hadn't gone far. At this moment, any traitor would be in a dilemma. Therefore, whoever called first would be the most suspicious. However, just like what King Huang had said, at the very least, these people wouldn't be as impulsive as some people. Not a single red dot flashed on the screen. Everyone was waiting. A pure black sports car flashed past his eyes. At this time, Director Huang had also realized something. You sent someone to follow these 4 people? Chinemo replied, giving off a nonchalant vibe from start to finish. But she knew that the Almighty's nonchalance was scarier than anyone else. When was this trap set up? He chose to activate it at this time. It wasn't just the other party, even Director Huang was dumbfounded. As expected, Ambassador Huang stood up again. Where did you find these people? I'm telling you, don't give me any trouble. This is a crucial time. If you offend those 4, they'll report you to the higher-ups and you'll be banned again. Afraid of him? Just these 2 words. He was very calm. In the middle, Chinemo didn't forget to reach out, pushing the youngster's fringe aside. Bojio glanced at the screen, thinking to herself, I'm impressed by the Almighty. He's the only one with such arrogance. Brother Mo, society, he's ruthless and rich. Wait a minute. It's here. Bojio moved her fingers, her dark eyes glinting. This time it was really here. She magnified the red dot that was emitting the signal. At the same time, a cold glint flashed past Chinmo's eyes. It was a signal that a call had been made or received. But usually, after such a secret meeting, there wouldn't be any calls. Unless it was a business matter. In other words, whoever's phone had a response at this time was definitely a problem. Bojio reached out, magnifying her voice. Hello. Someone had made a call. If that was the case, the other party was even more suspicious. The call was synchronized with Director Huang's voice. Hence, when he heard the word, hello, Director Huang was the most nervous. He didn't want anything to happen to the higher-ups. Don't talk to me about the past, this is the present. What's the content of the meeting? How did you know we had a meeting today? Director Huang's throat went dry. I don't care where you got the information from, I can tell you that the content of the meeting has nothing to do with what you received. Don't call me again. Also, as a grassroots member, do your job properly. Don't always think of using this kind of method to find out information. Why are the things you learned in school useless? If there are such secret meetings in the future and someone gives you information, just pretend that you didn't hear it. It's so chaotic now and you're still rushing to get involved. Are you trying to throw away the hat on your head? Speaking up to this point, the secretary rubbed the space between his eyebrows. Who told you about this? It's that person from the criminal investigation department. I thought the higher-ups had found out about me. Before he could finish his sentence, he was interrupted. Wang Chuanlei? How could he tell you about such an important meeting? That's ridiculous. Director Huang spoke up. The 2 of them have nothing to do with the case, it can only be considered a leak. It seems like the 4 of them aren't the traitors. That might not be the case. Wait a minute. These 2 sentences came out almost at the same time. It was Chinemo and Bojio. Both of them paused before replying in unison. We have to investigate Wang Chuanlei. Wang Chuanlei? Director Huang broke into laughter. Stop joking, even during the meeting he agreed with me not to inform the higher-ups. This is the only way to catch the traitor. How could there be a problem with such a person? Chinmo's voice was calm, but it hit the nail on the head. Since he is so focused on finding the traitor, why did he leak the news of such an important meeting before it started? Director Huang choked. He couldn't answer the question. When there's a conflict between actions and words, it means there's something fishy going on. Chinemo supported his chin, the sunlight streaming through the car window onto his handsome face. This is basic criminology. Besides, to be able to hide for such a long time without being discovered, this person isn't a linear thinker. Under normal circumstances, such people are highly vigilant. If they don't have a certain level of anti-detection ability, they wouldn't reveal the key points to the criminal during every operation. Such a person would definitely be meticulous and wouldn't easily give themselves away. After so many days, he should have noticed the crime squad's internal investigation. That's why he found someone to distract them before the meeting. This person wouldn't just be a distraction, he could also be used as a shield if there really was a leak. As for why he agreed with you not informing the higher-ups, it's because once the higher-ups are mobilized, the possibility of the criminal escaping would decrease. Making use of the time difference to escape is a professional method. Director Huang. Why did he feel as though he was being mocked for his intelligence? Bojio chewed on a lollipop. As for why she had the same thoughts as the Almighty, it was because she had always done things in the same manner, creating a diversion to divert attention. There were many suspicious points about Wang Chuanlei. If not, how was she going to explain the call he had made before entering the meeting? The most interesting thing was, Bojo smiled, enlarging the screen. Wang Chuanlei's phone is transmitting information as well. Any kind of information was transmitted through the internet. It was the same regardless of whether it was Unicom or Telecom. Right now, Bojo was intercepting this kind of information. There was information being transmitted, but there wasn't any sound coming from the phone. It was impossible that there wasn't a listening device. There was only one possibility left. He's sending a text message. The moment she finished her sentence, Qin Imo pressed down on his Bluetooth earpiece. Qin Imo pressed his Bluetooth earpiece. Number 1, focus on tracking. Yes. In that instant, all the cars that had been on the 4 routes converged onto a single road. If a drone were to capture the scene, it would look like a movie about a case being solved. Wang Chuanlei, who was in the car, wasn't aware of all this. He avoided the driver in front, his fingers still texting. Regardless of what method you use, head to the border as soon as possible. I'll get someone to settle the documents for you. The crime squad is already doing a face check. Don't go to the airport, subway or high-speed rail. This time, I don't care what you think or how capable you are, you have to listen to me. At this moment, Wang Chuanlei felt as though he was on a roller coaster. He had never expected that even Fan Jia would be exposed. When he had heard Fan Jia's name in the meeting room, his heart had been shaken. What exactly had happened? How had the crime squad found her location so quickly? Even though they had locked onto a university was huge. However, a university was so big. How could it be possible to find a person in just a few days? Besides, Fan Jia had always been intelligent. Wang Chuanlei tried his best to control his expression, afraid that Cixer would notice something. But even so, he couldn't hide his guilty conscience. The sweat on his forehead had been dripping down ever since he had boarded the car. Fortunately, before the meeting he had given someone a call. This meant that even if the arrest wasn't successful and the news was leaked, it wouldn't be from him. Wang Chuanlei took a deep breath and loosened his tie. Nothing would go wrong as long as he considered everything.